Hello there, Sniperz227 here with another tutorial in our engine series. In our last tutorial, we went and I basically showed you how to draw vertexes differently, more efficiently, modern way, using vertex arrays, and now I'm going to show you how to load this object file. So first thing we're going to do is we're just going to make another header file called object loader. So object loader, add, and there's other file formats that you could choose to load. This one's easier. So going to include string.h, include blue, include fstring, what else? Vector, actually, you know what? Just include core, because it has most of that. Just include string here. So now I'm going to make a class called object loader underscore, and put two functions, like I said. One's going to be an int load data, and it's going to take a string called file name, so the file name using namespace std, just going to do this so you don't get the error. So it should go there. There you go. And just void render object with nothing in it. Simple enough. Now we're going to write the function, and I'm just going to give you a quick heads up on what we're doing, how we're doing it, and what exactly we're going to do. And hopefully after this, you'll understand how easy it is to load an object file. So I'm just going to make a structure called object vertex, and it's going to have some variables, I think. So int, let me just look at the object file. So we need, 6, we'll need 6, so we need int f1, actually gl double f1, gl double, or actually gl int f1, f2, gl int f3. So right now we're going to write it for just a simple object file without UV coordinates, normals or anything, and it's triangulated, so it should just look like this. So let's write these. So So if you haven't already noticed, this is going to be it's going to store first phase, second phase, third phase. So where is render? So much like this, you see how I categorize it into 3 faces, because 3 faces make up, or basically the elements, these 3 elements make up 1 face. X, Y, Z is going to be like our vertex. Push back right here. For the coordinates, it's going to store the X, Y coordinates. Also, I grouped into 3 X, Y, Z. X, Y, Z. And this was I used Blender 2.49. Just look in your object file. It can be from anything. Just make sure it's always going to have this, but make sure it only has 3 numbers here. Sometimes the newer ones, if you have to click triangulate to get this, I'm pretty sure, in the options, and you have to unselect texture coordinates, UV coordinates, normals, or else it will look something like this, and it won't load properly for our loader. I'll show you what I mean. Just quickly export this as an object. So wavefront object, if I just go to C, this is too easy to take it. So just go back, desktop, documents, 2010 projects. So in C we have to take off materials, UVs, normals also, and hit triangulate, and just make sure you have that in your program. One thing I noticed was when I tried exporting it from 3ds Max as an object, and it looked exactly like this, it gave me a hard time not loading it, but drawing it looked weird. So try and export it as an object in 3ds Max, import it in Blender or something. But yeah, let's get on to it. So we have a structure, and we're going to name it object, or F, just object set. And have our 2 functions. File name and void object loader object. So a little bit about what we're gonna do. Let's quickly explain it. Oh yeah. So right here, the V stands for vertex, X coordinate, Y coordinate, Z, so on, so forth, goes on, has 8 vertexes, 8 vertexes, 8 lines. Then over here, F stands for the face, so face 1 is composed of element number 5, 1, and 4, but again, like we did in the previous tutorial, we're going to have to subtract that by 1, because in arrays we go by 0 as our first element, not 1. So basically we're just going to load this file, use a function called getLine. What getLine does is it reads this file line by line, so it reads line 1, stores it in a string, then it reads line 2, and it just keeps going until it's done. And what we're going to do is we're just going to use that and write an if statement saying if they find v, then use a function to get this. Same thing for this. So just going to use if string. I believe I had f string, no I did not include f string. If string and f string is basically used for file input output. if stream is for reading a file, off stream is for writing, f stream is for both. So we're only going to read the file, so we're going to use if stream, and then f underscore, so the name. So we're going to open it now. Open, and put file name as our string, and iOS int, so input. Now we're just going to use a simple while loop, so because getLine only, when you call getLine once, it only reads one line, so we're going to want it to loop through our entire file, so we're going to write exclamation mark for isn't, f underscore object, so if it isn't the EOF, which stands for end of file, so this loop's going to run till the end of the file. Then we're just going to use getLine, and it's going to ask what do we want to read, so we're going to read the f object, our file, so our cube file, and what string do we want to store it into. Set, I forgot to create the variable for the string, so string line, which is going to have all our lines in them. So f underscore object, and line. Now that we got that running, we're going to make our if statement, so if line.find v isn't equal to line.end position. So it's just saying if we find line. So if we find v in a space, this is important that you put the space, because you can see that there are a lot of other lowercase v's, and this is just a Blender file, so but in other files they also have several v's, so it'll stop there, but you can see here there's a v in a space, so it's going to stop whenever it sees this. And now we're going to use a function called scanf, scanf. We're going to use line and use, CSTR, because this parameter is a constant char and we have a string, so this basically converts it into a constant char, and it's going to ask us what we're looking for. So scanf basically scans the line and extracts information, whatever you want, whatever you will specify. So we're gonna have to tell it what line we have. So the line is gonna have v, then it's gonna have a space, and then we're gonna do %f, because after the v it has 3 floats. You can see v and then 3 f's, and we go like this, and we tell it where to store all the floats. So we're going to use ampersand, and then use object dot, so our structure, and the first one's going to be the x, so the first float's going to be x, then y, then z, so store the x, the first float in the x, the second one in the y, and the third one in the z. And then after we just use, I should probably go to render, go up here, bring that in here, and we're going to use vertex dot pushback object x, so we're going to push back the x first, push back the y, so this is basically the same thing we did over there when we copy and pasted the vertices, except this is going to do it for us, and push back the z. So now after, it's going to keep going until it can't find a v with a space, so basically here, then it's going to keep reading the line, so it's going to read this line, and we don't have an if statement, so it's not going to do anything. Read this line, it's going to store it. Now we're going to do the same thing for faces, if line dot find, and then again f space, because there could be f's, so there could be lowercase f's somewhere else in the file, f space doesn't equal to line dot end positioning. So when we find it, we're going to use scanf again, line dot c str to convert it, then f space percentage, and this time it's an integer or a double value, so we could do and d and d and d, and then store it to our structure. So object phase1, so the first phase, object f2, and object f3. So if you don't triangulate it, some do have 4. So basically you could create another function, so you could create another load data function if you wanted, and just break this exact code except for this, include another double, include another phase 4. I'm not going to do this because I like using triangulated files. So now that we got that done, we have to remember that these aren't correct because in an array the first value is going to be 0, so we have to subtract 1 before we push it back. So object.f1 equals object.f1 minus 1. So basically what that does is it takes whatever f1 is and subtracts it by 1. If we did object equals f1 or object.f2 equals -1, just like that, it would just make the it would just set the variable to -1 instead of subtracting 1. So yeah, object f1 minus 1 f2, object f3 equals object minus 1, and now we push it back. So faces dot push back object f1 faces dot push back object dot f2 and faces dot push back object dot f3. So now that we've got all our information, we can start rendering it. So we're going to take just this code and just paste it into the render function, and now we're done. It's that easy. So basically what we did was we used the pushback, I'll show you, we used the pushback to the init function to basically push back all our variables like we did in the actual initialize function, or render initialize function, and then we took this and just put it in our render because that's how we're going to render it. And now all we have to do is obviously include object loader.h, and then object for loader equals object, set it's null, set a pointer, and then we call it something else. Object loader is not a type. My bad. Should probably check the structure. Yeah, I did. Okay. So semicolon missing. All of a sudden Visual Studio is tripping shit. So the file name is going to be, we're going to use cube.object, and then now we're just going to render it. So object render data. So now, assuming we saw the object file, yes, we just run it and watch the fireworks go off. Oh good. Oh, let's return fireworks. because it's an integer type, return 0. So scan, there we go, that cube. And now you see we could change that cube to something else, so I'm just gonna open up a high poly model and show you how that works. So this is my M9 I modeled a long time ago. It's about 12,000 triangles, 6,000 faces, but since we're using triangles it's going to get converted, so it's going to be 12,000 triangles, about 6,700 vertices. That's a lot, so we're just going to go and export it into the directory engine framework. Maybe just M9 object, export it as triangular, take off the material, and now we can just rename this, where is it, to M9 the object. And now you'll see how our engine loads big files. You have to wait, but you can see it's loading it. We don't have proper lighting and stuff, so you can't really see the detail, but you can see loaded the file really clean. It only took what at startup? Let's see, 2 seconds at most. 1, 2, there you go. Not even, barely 2. Just loads that. So, yep, there's your object loader, the Sniperz227. If you have any questions, comments. An exercise I suggest you do is try and load the PLY file. You can see it's a lot easier. It's more simple than the object, very similar. Even tells you how many vertexes there are and faces, hint hint, nudge nudge if you're going to use it. But yep, Sniperz227. If you have any questions, ask, comments, comment on my thing, and subscribe. Catch you guys next tutorial, and I'd like to also add that we will get into loading textures out of our object files, so texture the models later, but that's for a different tutorial. I'll see you guys later.